Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to say something about space being the final frontier. Yeah, you know where that comes from. But instead, I'll just say exploring the cosmic canvas where the mysteries of life unfold and the possibilities are infinite is where we are and always will be. We welcome back to the show today, Mr. Shaun Rosado. I am super excited to talk to him. He knows things about everything, and I thought this would be an excellent topic for him to talk with us about. I don't even know where we're going to be in 100 million years, but if we take over from what 13.8 billion, which is the number that we all look about,
Yeah,
like how
ballpark.
long the universe has been around until now, we'll see how things go. Anyway, here we go. Sean, I am so happy to see you here, man. I love
Sorry, I
the
was just in
song.
my head, just jamming with that.
Weren't we just jamming about it? Yeah,
I do, yeah.
but no,
I just
I
also
love
love
the
that music.
haircut. I'm really
Thank
feeling.
you. Yes, I had
Yes.
to finally cut my hair. My wife loves my longer hair. But there's a certain
I'm
point where I'm like I have to cut it because
yeah
it was
here.
becoming like chaos squirrels, and I had reached that point.
I
So
got you. I feel it. Let's jump into this topic today. I want to talk about some
yes.
space time. I want to talk about how long we've been here. And here's the first question I have for you.
Okay.
A lot of times you hear the number 13.8 billion. Now, the James Webb telescope is up there.
Right.
Everyone's looking at the cosmos.
Mhm.
13.8 billion is a long time.
It is.
Are we going to be here when it ticks from 13.8 to 13.9? That's 100 million years,
That's
right?
100 million years. That is a long time. Okay, so this is one of those things that when you sit down and think about it, you have to realize that the sum total of human civilization
Hmm.
is a fraction of a second when you look at the cosmic scale. We
Exactly.
don't we don't know because we only have one civilization or species that is civilized to use as a point of reference. So from our point of reference, we can only trace human civilization back about 15,000 years. I mean,
At
we've
the
obviously,
most, right?
yeah, I mean, this is me being extraordinarily generous, but
Right.
going back further than that, we could track our species, but the civilization side of it, not as much. But we don't know if that is a good start or if that is the beginning or if we're already extremely long lived. We might be on the long lived side as far as sentient species building civilizations. We just
Exactly.
don't know because we haven't been able to find any evidence yet out there. So when you ask, will humans be around in 100 million years? There's
Right.
a part of me that says, I think we're stubborn enough to do it, but I don't think we would be the way we are now. I think the things that would be considered human in 100 million years would look so much different than us that
Yep.
we wouldn't be able to recognize them.
I
So
I actually had
yeah.
that question about Star Trek too, because you and I watched some Star Trek, watched some
Mhm.
Star Wars, and what is it? Discovery branched off into one of the new series, and
Yep.
they're supposed to be 700 years in the future. I don't think they're
Yeah,
even
900 from the Kirk era. It's like 700 from like the Picardish era, something like that. Yeah.
yeah. And so I can't even see. I think they've got the technology way too close to today's technology for 700 years from now. If you
Hmm.
think about it, what we started the space program in 69, right?
Yes.
1969 to 2023, right? So not that long. And we've come from basically using computers the size of buildings,
Hmm.
rooms and buildings, to microchips in a very short amount of time. So
Right.
in the amount of time that we will be here from now until, let's call it almost infinity, 100 million years from now, or
Hmm.
even with 700 years from now, I think we are outpacing the technology. I mean, we can't think of where we're going to be in 100 million years, not even
I mean, we
700.
couldn't even predict where we were going to be 100 years from now. If you go back to the early 20th century and look at the speculative fiction of that time,
Yeah,
I mean, Jules Verne is a great example of late 19th century speculation, how we were going to have, flying cars, we were going to have colonies on the moon and all this other stuff. And no, he did, though, accurately predict that we would have rockets that would be able to pierce the heavens and be able to travel to the stars. We have been able to do that. And that's only predicting, decades in the future. How can one reasonably be assured to say this is what this is going to look like in 100 million years. There's actually a really interesting book series that starts off with the three body problem. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one at all. Have you
No,
ever?
go into it. What's the three body problem?
Okay, well, the three body problem is actually a formula that, in general, is this idea that you can accurately plot two positions at any given time in space, so long as they're just simply orbiting one another or have some kind of stationary orbit around them. As
Okay.
soon as you add in a third body, be it another moon, a plane, a planet, whatever, the math starts to get really wonky because now you're taking into considerations and variables that you cannot always predict because their own gravities will change things. So the idea is that as soon as you start to add in numerous variables beyond two, you start to have problems predicting what's going to happen. And this is part of a book series known as The Remembrance of Earth's Past. If I remember correctly, I will butcher this name, so please forgive me, those of you who are a fan of this book series. It's Shijin Liu, I believe, is the name of the author.
Is this a fantasy series or is this like real science series?
It's like a super crunchy science fiction series. So the idea behind Shijin Liu's premise is everything that they present has to be based in as solid science as possible. And if they're going to present fantastical things, time or very reasoned reactions have to be explained as to why this is going to be able to
I
occur.
love that.
And that actually, those three books basically talk about a lot of scientific theories that people who like to talk about scientific circles, it's good, interesting, like kind of like theoretical games. But we don't really ever talk about it out loud because, quite frankly, it's scary stuff. So you have the three body problem, which
Yeah.
is how does, like, so humanity go into the stars. Okay, great. In the first book, the three body problem, we find out there are these people called the Trisolarans who come from a star system with three suns, and they're coming to Earth and they're going to invade us. But they can only travel near the speed of light. So it's going to take hundreds of years for them to get to us.
Uh-huh.
We know they're coming. We can't stop them. Their technology is so advanced that they're already able to influence us centuries out before they're able to get to us.
I'm going to read this series without a doubt. I don't want
So,
any spoilers because I got to read this. This is amazing.
okay, no problem. So then I'll skip over all the stuff that happens. But needless to say, bad stuff happens and good stuff happens, but mostly bad stuff happens. And the idea, and this is the thing about the book series that I find fascinating, is the idea is there are problems and there are things that as humans we don't like to think about. Our own exploration. What will we look like in 100,000 years, much less 100 million years? Can humanity survive technological epochs or, annihilation events? Things that we know probably will happen some point in our future just because they happen everywhere.
Yep.
This is a very chaotic machine that we live in, and there are just weird things that happen. So Shijin Liu tries to say, hey, yes, this stuff will happen, but this is also how we can still survive.
So let me ask
So,
you this then. I
yes.
have a question. I'm going to bring this round to where we are today.
Mhm.
We keep the planet right now are looking to head back to the moon and we're
Yes.
looking to head to Mars, which
Yes.
is like in terms of infinity is
So
basically going nowhere.
yes,
Okay.
we're literally going into we're walking from the house to the backyard.
Right. At the most. And we're going to probably kill ourselves on the way getting from that room to the backyard.
Well,
Some not the whole humanity. I'm saying like we're going
right,
to
right.
have
People will
spaceship.
die. I mean, yes, people
Yeah.
will die. Okay,
We're gonna
this is
trip
something
on
that
a
we've
see, we're gonna trip on a banana peel between the kitchen and the backyard.
right. Well, this is something that nobody likes to talk about as well in science, which is that it is an unfortunate fact that some of our greatest steps and leaps forward have come at the expense of human lives. Um,
Yes.
Medical science. I mean, hell, the very first time we tried to launch somebody into the atmosphere with the Apollo 1, there was a fault. There was too much spark. Basically went off in the cabin and ignited the O2 rich environment, and the astronauts burned alive and almost destroyed our hopes to go to the moon before we even started. And those are things that we learn from Challenger. We learned from Challenger.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before.
Well,
scientists
you're
and
learning from Musk,
astronauts.
right? Kate just blew up one. I mean, just
Yeah, well, yeah, but okay. As we talked about last time, right? The
yeah,
what was it? Unscheduled disassembly.
right.
Oh my. Yeah, Musk. I don't like to put in the category, but ultimately, even his experimentations will lead to a greater knowledge of what we can do.
Yeah,
But yeah, people die to further humanity's knowledge. We never want to take that for granted. We always want to recognize that and recognize the people who put themselves in harm's way as frankly some of the biggest heroes that our collective society will ever know.
yeah,
Every person, be they Russian, Chinese, American, Australian, English, I don't care who, if they're going to space, if they're putting their life on the line in order to further human advancement into extraordinary places, they're heroes to our
yeah.
civilization. So they're
Are we
amazing.
going to be alive when we're going to get to the moon? Was it the Japanese that just had one that ran out of fuel and crashed on the moon not
Yeah,
long
well,
ago? Or
we have our unmanned probe that's doing its mission right now, and it's doing great. So the next one is 2025, I think, and we're going to the
Mhm.
moon. So we will be alive, fingers crossed,
Yeah,
to see people return to the moon, and I'm really excited for that.
I am excited about that. Are we going to stay up there and like build some colonies? You think or not?
Yes, that is the next step. They've already started to reveal the plans for the first moon colony, because China is planning on making a colony on the moon. So
Mm.
we are kind of in another Cold War, another space race Cold War, except this time instead of it being against Russia, it's against China. Um, so
Yeah.
it's interesting that show I told you about with the altered history for all
Mhm.
mankind. It's a little more salient than it was just a couple years ago.
So who's gonna rule the moon? Have we learned anything in history? You think about like
Well,
whoever gets there first and plants a flag, they own it because we've already done that.
technically we've already done that.
Yeah,
But theoretically, the way it works is nobody can own space. We've kind of established that. Um,
kind of.
so right, we've established that nobody can like own space. But
Mhm.
what we can own technically is still bodies of like land. So the assumption is as soon as somebody puts a permanent boot on the ground on a celestial body, we're going to start divvying it up just like we would here at home.
That
So
is,
it will be a how much land can you hold reasonably?
yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous that we haven't learned from, let's call it our past instead of
Yeah.
our mistakes. That we somehow got to figure out how to share some stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to realize too that from again a evolutionary point of view, civilization, the thing that actually allows us to not kill each other because we find out that working together makes us better,
Hmm.
is a concept that's still really, I mean, if I'm being extraordinarily generous, 2,000 years,
Yeah,
and that's me being really generous. But
yeah,
quite frankly, the cooperation aspect of the planet trying not to murder each other all the time, and again, this is ignoring world wars. Um, Maybe 150 years.
yeah.
You
It it
know,
we'll be lucky if we don't have another war in the next several years.
well, and I mean, but that's okay because it also pushes us towards people see this is not the way to go. Like there are people out there who believe that we're just animals who happen to figure things out, and we're never going to be able to evolve past that animal primal basis. However, I would argue that if that was the case, humanity would not have flourished as much as it had.
Correct. And we have gotten less, warlike over the years, over time.
Yes, the atrocities still happen. They're still terrible. They happen daily all over the world in villages. But narratively, and factually, it has plummeted, because we have learned, step by step, bit by bit, working together is still a more desirable outcome than just wasting human life.
Yeah.
So it's an odd conundrum, our species, because we look at it and we say this is terrible, and it's really difficult to say, yeah, but if you just look back 100 years, it was way worse because
Way
it's
worse.
true. Yeah. And you could say, yeah, that's true. But does that help me right now? No. 100 years from now, there'll still be wars, but it'll probably be nothing compared to what we're doing now. And they'll be like, yeah, but at least we're not like those early 21st century folks. Man, they were just crazy. Um, and that gives me hope to know that we'll figure it out as long as we can always manufacture and maintain resources as we continue to terraform our own planet, which is what we've been doing. Um, as we continue to try to figure out how to share resources and how to make resources so that way we can survive here collectively, I think will be pretty amazing. But we're going to make mistakes. It's just going to happen.
I really want to hit this. I love the idea of the science fiction and the reality coming together.
Mm-hmm.
I also like we had a conversation before about, are we the only things in the universe, and if so, what is our responsibility?
Right.
But let's take just for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use the science that we know and we can maybe predict out 20, 30, 40 years, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and um, look at what it's going to look like on the moon. Just let's fantasize for a minute. We're
Okay.
going to be there in probably 5 years or less.
Yes. Well, I would say by the end of this decade, we will probably have some sort of presence actually forming on the moon at
Yeah.
that point. So it's going to be
What is it
pretty
going to
crazy.
look like? We think, just let's fantasize for a
So, but
minute.
if we're going 30, 40 years in the future, at that point, we'll have probably started mining helium-3, which is a critical component for nuclear fusion.
Hmm.
At that point, we will probably be making nuclear fusion devices on planet Earth, which will allow us to have not unlimited clean energy, but will allow us to have an extraordinary surplus of clean green energy. We will have probably figured out ways of developing vertical farming, horticulture, agriculture, and also aquaculture. So that way we're leaving our environment alone as we have started to figure out how to also extract carbon from the atmosphere. I believe that we'll be a far more electrified society. But we'll also be more vulnerable because of the fact that we need to make sure that our electrical resources are hardened, because EMPs, solar flares, things like that can mess with these grids if we
Yes.
don't take care of that. But with things like helium-3 and nuclear fission now being on the table, it is definitely something that we can do. I believe that there will probably be multiple states that own parts of the moon,
Yeah.
and there will probably be skirmishes up there. We'll probably have our first murder on the moon by then. We'll probably have our first, if not war, at least battle probably on the moon 30, 40 years down the line.
Yeah.
And it probably will push us close to, some fairly scary language. But helium-3 also gives us the ability to go to Mars. And if we
Explain
can,
helium-free. I don't know that term yet. What is it?
so
Helium-free.
helium-3 is essentially a byproduct. So
Oh,
basically, do you
you're
know
saying
what
helium-3? 1, 2, 3.
helium-3? Yes, helium-3.
Okay. It's got three what?
Helium-3 is basically an isotope of helium. It has two neutrons and one proton. No, it has two protons and one neutron. And it is considered a stable isotope outside of like regular hydrogen and whatnot. So it essentially allows us to have a lot of extra energy. So think of it like this way: when you're talking about isotopes, more times than not, you have to have the same amount of protons and neutrons in order for it to be considered stable. If it
Okay.
is considered unstable, you have stuff that could potentially become nuclear, like fallout material. You don't want that, right? Like, so
Right.
we have things like plutonium and whatnot. They're not stable. Helium-3 is considered stable. And what that means is that because it has that extra proton, the
Yeah.
neutron, that means that there's extra energy just sitting inside of it. So if we can smash them together, we can release all that energy, and it goes from being helium-3 to regular helium.
Gotcha. So that gives us a way to get more power so that we can go more places and not
Exactly.
sweat it as much. So,
Exactly. And also, this is just a fun fact. So here's a cool scientific fun fact for you, okay?
uh,
Um, what are the two most common elements in the entire universe? Our entire universe, what are the two most common elements?
I'm going to go with hydrogen. I don't know.
Okay,
I'm going to
that's
go with
one.
that. And I'm going to go with, if it has to be an element, it can't be oxygen because that's not an element. Or, so I'm going to go with helium.
You are correct.
Okay.
Now, the question is this: hydrogen and helium make up how much of the total mass of the entire cosmos?
Well, if they're the most prevalent, I'm going to go with 90%. Is that too high?
No, it's not actually.
Okay. But what is it?
98% of the entire universe is helium or hydrogen. Everything else, gold, all the other elements that you've ever seen on the periodic table makes up 2%.
and we ended up breathing oxygen.
Well, oxygen and nitrogen. It's funny. We
Yeah.
always talk about breathing oxygen,
Well,
but
we actually don't, do we?
we
No.
don't. The majority of our atmosphere is actually nitrogen based. We actually have quite a bit of nitrogen in our atmosphere, but we have a lot of oxygen mixed in there with it.
Hmm.
And oxygen is what we use in order to metabolize. So, yeah, O2 is what we actually breathe, but we also breathe in a bunch of nitrogen. It just doesn't do anything to us
There we go.
because we're just like, whatever. Yeah, like our bodies are just like, it's nitrogen. We don't care. So, at
So
least in that quantity.
when we get to the moon, are we going to actually have? We got to have houses. We can't breathe up there yet. Are we going
Yes.
to terraform it, or are we just going to always have to run around in spacesuits or
Yeah.
invisible shield suits or something because it gets cold and hot?
Yeah. Okay. So the problem with making an atmosphere is you have to have a couple things that really we don't have on the moon. Basically, the moon doesn't have anything on it in order in which to generate atmosphere. It doesn't have enough gravity. It doesn't have enough particulate. It doesn't have enough variable elements in order in which to start to create it. We could try to seed it to see if that could happen, but the fact of the matter is that our science isn't there yet. If we could figure out a way to create a breathable atmosphere on the moon, we would be able to figure out a way to fix global warming way before then on the planet Earth. So yeah, we're gonna be living in bubbles. We're gonna be living in giant like domes and stuff. More than likely, they will probably be multiple layers because one of the things I think is hilarious in all the speculative fiction I ever see is they like to show like the moon as being like one big glass dome or it's
Uh,
just like one concrete block and I'm like you're out of your damn mind. There's going to be like 5 layers and each one is going to be like a bunker thick, and yeah, you'll have windows and stuff and you'll have like, even if they have like a glass dome, there would be like 5 layers of glass dome because you can't have one layer between you and the vacuum of space if people are going to permanently live there. You're going to have redundancies upon redundancies because otherwise, I mean, imagine like everybody lives in their own building and the buildings maybe can lock down, they can become airtight, and
okay,
they're all underneath a giant dome. And then there are other parts that are more secured, militarized, whatever. If something cracked that glass dome
we're
and it
done.
just blew out, the explosive pressure decompression that would occur would probably kill almost everybody instantaneously because your body would go from zero or from like 1G, one atmospheric pressure to no atmospheric pressures instantaneously. You would be sucked out of whatever hole you're looking at. You would basically lose the majority of your oxygen. So even if you were in like your apartment building or whatever, and it locks down, unless it has an independent O2 source, chances are most of your oxygen is just blown away. It's catastrophic to think
Yeah.
of a glass dome like that. You need big old glass domes, and it all has to be extraordinarily secured to resist radiation.
So not just glass. We're going to need some sort of plexiglass, Star Trek,
Transparent
see-through,
aluminum, yeah.
transparent aluminum,
Yeah,
material that can withstand nuclear everything.
yeah. I mean, honestly, what is it? Carbo. I forgot. I just read a paper about this. It's like nanotube carbofilament or something like that. I forget what it is, but it's essentially they're making a nanofilament
Yeah.
that they can shape to look like anything. And they're starting to play around with making it look transparent, but it has tensile strength that is equal to steel.
Yeah.
So
What is that metal that you can stretch it out and all of a sudden you just heat it up and it just goes right back to where it started? Now
I
I
I
just
don't know
watched
that
a
one.
video on that the other day. They use it to make tires for the moon
Yeah, no, I
rovers and
actually I
for
excuse me, I know exactly which one you're talking about, but off the top of my head, I can't remember it.
I
But I know,
cannot
yeah,
remember.
the moon tires are awesome.
They are awesome. Matter of fact, we
Like
should be using those now instead of rubber, and then we don't have to worry about where to put all the rubber.
we should, except that I don't think people want to pay a couple $1,000s per wheel. If you knew it was
Well,
the
it'll come
lifetime of
down.
that car,
You know,
well,
it'll come
eventually,
down.
sure. But you're talking about that's a long time for it to come down. Manufacturing costs between when you make it and when you industrialize it, meaning that you're able to make hundreds of thousands of them. There's a long. That's why most technology doesn't survive. That's why we keep reinventing it, is because we're trying to make something. Because this is how it is. I have an idea for an invention. Boom, cool. Now we have to invent money to find a way to make it scale.
Right?
Okay. You've now sunk so much money in here, investors are like, screw it. And then somebody says, oh, let me try this idea that'll make it faster. Oh, that could work. Boom, you're back up to that curve again. And then you're
Yep.
going down again. It is very rare that you get somebody that gets to the other side where it becomes profitable and cheap.
Well, we'll let NASA keep working on it, just like they did with Velcro, and maybe we'll
Yes.
get the metal tires that are awesome one day.
Oh man, that'd be so amazing. By the time we get metal tires, we'll have
Imagine.
flying cars or something. Who knows? Like,
God, flying cars have been like the dream forever, right? I
yeah.
mean, that is the dream. That and Iron Man, I think that's kind of
Yeah, I still don't
where we're
want
going.
flying cars though. I can't. That's terrifying to me. People can't drive on the damn road. You want to put them in the air where they can get faster and get like terminal velocity if they get too high. I mean,
Yeah,
think
maybe
about it.
they'll be like
Imagine what a minute.
Futurama. We just go through the tubes, and then we don't have to worry, except maybe hitting heads with somebody.
Yes, Futurama tubes, I'm okay with, except of course when they do those funny pileups, like in New York, where they'll show like the pileups of people. I'm like, okay, whoever's in the middle of that pileup is dead
Right.
because the bodies just keep slapping against each other. A realistic depiction of that would just be a gory, bloody. It would be terrible.
We'll have
Um,
watchers. There'll be cleaners to clean out the tubes. It'll be okay.
yeah, well, I mean, this is also a future where they have suicide booths. So, I mean, this is
Oh my god.
yeah, I mean, Futurama I love, but there is some dark stuff, especially in those early episodes.
Oh
Like,
my god.
so dark, it's so dark, man. So yeah, no, but it's a cool idea when you think about the future and where we can go, because the only thing that is stepping in front of us that will hamper us that we can predict is our own kind of hubris, our own ability to
Yeah.
get in our own way.
Well, on that note right there, on that happy note right there, let's cut this one off. I want to thank you so much. If I could put so-sos on the screen, I would do that right now. Uh,
So
I love that you jumped in with us as a awesome guest at the last second. For you guys that don't know, our guest today had some problems, and Shaun jumped in. I love talking to him because it's been
thank
like
you.
every conversation is amazing. It's naturally flowing and it's fun. And I learn stuff all the time. So basically, I'm just sucking his brain. So
I'm okay with that. And just so nobody forgets, if you are interested in that book, it's only 3 books. The series is only 3 books long. It's called The Three Body Problem. It is written by Cixin Liu, and I'll spell it for you: Cixin space Liu Liu. So Cixin Liu, and it is part of the Remembrance of Earth's Past series, and it's originally a Chinese series. It's been adapted and translated. It's only 3 novels. You will get a little depressed at certain points, and it does take you, as you were asking, basically to what humanity will look like at the end of the universe.
Wow,
So
I think I can basically handle that one. If it's not like I just finished the 4th book of the Stormlight series with Brandon Sanderson.
yep.
That one was like what 26 hours on audio tape. So I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I think like I think audiobook wise, I think they're like more like in the 14-hour range or something like that.
Yeah,
Like 10 to 14-hour range.
yeah, that's a walk in the park.
Yeah, there is a 4th book, but it's not written by Cixin Liu. It's written by somebody else, and there's a reason for it, but I won't say because it spoils things.
Yeah,
Um,
no spoilers.
but yes, the trilogy, like I said,
All right,
Remembrances of Earth Path.
thank you for being on. I
You're
will
welcome.
talk to you in just a minute. All right, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Bye bye.